What the factorial rhythm? Okay, now it's time to talk about improvisation. And for improvisation, we need to have rhythmical reference. For rhythmical reference, I use Mick Goodrick's Factorial Rhythm book. This is incredibly helpful book about the rhythmic understanding. And the main idea about the Factorial Rhythm, he was trying to create a very clear understanding for rhythmic pattern recognition. And he used patterns to create the longer understanding of rhythmic phrases. And then by means of this clear perception, you can focus on the rhythm, melody, and harmony relationship. Actually, and also I used Arnold Schoenberg's very important phrase about the harmonic understanding. He said, watch the harmony, watch the progression, watch the root. This is the main idea about how I am approaching in jazz improvisation. I use first rhythmic cycles and rhythmic phrases on the basis of factorial rhythm, and also I apply them to root motion, harmonic progression, and harmonic structures. Let me explain this combination in our primary tonal progression, and then I will apply the same principles to minor harmony example. Okay, let's start with 2-5-1. Okay, we have 2-5-1 in our primary tonal progression, right? And this is C major. And most of the jazz improvisation exercises are based on this. And here we have 2 minor 7, 5 dominant 7, and 1 major 7. Let's talk about their chord scales. You remember for 2 minor 7 we have Dorian. For G dominant 7 we have Mixolydian, and we have Ionian for. Let's hear the chords and the chord scales together. This is D Dorian. Then G Mixolydian, then Do Ionian or C Ionian. Sorry about some terminology confusion. Sometimes I use C, sometimes I use Do, but you can understand the general idea about the structures. That's the most important thing. Sometimes terminology created kind of the ambiguity, but you can have two options or one or like C or Do, but it's important to have the right context. Okay, let's go back to our factorial rhythm. By the way, I want to emphasize the one important information about the related 2 minor 7. And whether we are in sub 5 context or dominant context or subdominant minor context, and when you have the 2 minor 7, try to use for Dorian. Try to use Dorian for 2 minor 7 or related 2 minor 7. I mean, especially there is a kind of a very important distinction about the compositional issues and improvisational issues. When you have less information about the improvisation, then you can focus on your improvisation in terms of the emotional and mental level more. This is the critical issue about the improvisation. And for compositional issues, according to key relationships, according to chord structures, chord colors, you can have adjustments. For example, for 2 minor related 2 minor 7, if have, for example, E minor 7, A dominant 7, and D minor 7. You can use E Dorian, but also you can use E Phrygian, because E minor 7 is 3 minor 7. In terms of centric connection, you can use the Phrygian for E minor 7. But for the improvisational purposes, that will be better to use Dorian for any kind of related 2 minor context. Okay, and let me explain the factorial rhythm. We have seed rhythms on the base of 3 attacks. Let me show the details. And we have, this is first rhythmic cell. The second one is here. The third one here. The fourth one is this one. Okay. We have the 3 attacks on the surface of 2 beats. And we have like ta, 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 ta 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 ta. This is our main phrase for factorial rhythm. Why did Mick Goodrick call this structure factorial rhythm? When you have numbers for each of them, 2, 3, 4. then you can have 24 variations because factorial value of 4 items is 24. When, for example, ta, taka, taka, ta, ta, tika, taka, ta. This is the second. And you can have 24 variations. Very, very useful tool for rhythmic understanding. But for jazz improvisation, we need to have the cultural connection, and this is, we call this cultural background swing. In terms of the relationship between the, in terms of the connection between the historical periods, when we started to see this swing, that was the beginning of ragtime. And the ragtime, we have the syncopated rhythms, and that syncopated variations and syncopated phrases turn out to be swing and swing period, and in a very strong way. To get to swing feeling, we have two main parameters. One is the syncopated rhythms. Syncopated rhythms mean the rhythms that have the strong accent on the weak points. For example, number third is a very good example because look at the structure, and then we have the longer value here that creates the syncopated form of rhythm. And the second parameter about the swing, and you have to accented beat on 2 and 4. It sounds like this: 1, 2, 3, 4. A 1, 2, 3, 4. A 1, 2, 3, 4. When you have these two parameters, you start to get the real connection with the jazz culture. Okay, let's apply these two important approaches, the chord scales and the rhythm, on the base of this tonal progression, and we'll see how they interact with each other. Okay, this is 2 minor 7, Dorian, Mixolydian, and okay, then I will apply the factorial rhythm. Okay. One, two, three, four. This is descending line for 2-5-1 chord scales, and according to that phrases, each chord has 6 notes because of the rhythmic phrase. One, for example, for Dorian, as you see from the scale, I don't use the Do for D Dorian. But if you want to use it, you can use, this is ascending one, and you can use a descending order like this. Then you can get different shape like this. Okay, when you have these two lines, ascending and descending lines, you can have more directions. Okay, that's very, very good. That's why when we have the factorial rhythm, you can have very clear and very precise understanding of the rhythmic structures. And let's go back to Arnold Schoenberg's explanation. What he said: watch the root, watch the harmony, watch the progression. Let's apply factorial rhythm on these 3 areas. And for jazz improvisation, you have to have very stable understanding of formal structure of songs. Otherwise, it's really hard to improvise because you can find yourself in chasing the chords by chords, and that's why you cannot focus on your impression, and then you cannot get the experience of integration. And to get that level, when you experience this root progression and then the harmony, you can have very clear perception about formal structures, and I will show on the next song. But let's make the process clear first. And what about the root? And when you apply this rhythmic structures, just for root, we have this is 2-5-1, right? And let's add chord for that progression. Very clear. And we also apply the factorial rhythm for chord scales, and also you can have the descending version. Okay. For this rhythmic structure, you can have, that's gonna be your base. And also in my experience, I use them for my rhythmic vocabulary, but of course during improvisation, that creates a kind of the foundation for you. Interaction between the players, interaction in the ensemble, of course you can have variations. But That gives you, that lays a foundation for you to understand and to follow the chord progressions in a very clear and comfortable way. Okay, up to that point, we use modal for primary 2-5-1, and we have the chord scales, and we have the factorial rhythms. Let's apply these.